You might notice I'm not even at the piano. And that's because what I'm about to show you doesn't require a single minute of practice at the piano, but it will help you learn your piece faster, play it more musically, and remember it longer. And most piano players are completely skipping this step.
Not today, old friend. We're practicing without you.
Okay, so how can you learn your piece faster without even touching the keys? It's listening, but not in the way that you think. Most adult piano players skip this step, but it's something that professionals do every time they set out to learn a piece. You can think of it like Google Maps. Listening while following along in your score gives your brain the turn-by-turn directions before you start driving. But without it, you're winging it. And no wonder you're missing all of the exits. So, how do you do it correctly so that it actually gets you big results? Let me show you. Hey piano people, I'm Ashlee from Ashlee on Music Studio, and I've practiced over 20,000 hours and taught thousands of piano players from all over the world. Here on the YouTube channel, I teach you how to practice smarter, not harder. Let's dive in. So let's go through a real piece so that I can show you exactly how to do this. We're going to look at Old French Song by Tchaikovsky, and I'm going to share with you 8-ish things that you can do to listen in a much more effective way so that you can learn pieces faster, memorize easier, and play with more musicality. Okay, so first things first, let's actually listen to the piece. Okay, that's at least the first little bit of it. Now, the first thing that you can listen for when you are listening with purpose is the overall impression, the mood, the musicality, the emotion. And when you hear this piece, you can hear that it's sad, it's melodic. There's a singing melody over the left-hand accompaniment. And if you didn't hear that, let's go ahead and listen to just that much of it again and see if you can notice that now. It's minor. Sad, this beautiful melody. So hopefully you were able to hear that. The second thing we're going to listen for is form. So what are the overall sections of the music? And you can actually write this in your score as you are listening. So we're gonna listen to the whole thing and I want you to follow along. We start with an A section, meaning this melody, dun, da, 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 dun, dun, da, 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 dun. Now, at some point, that's going to change. And I want you to listen for when it changes. And when it changes, does it change to something totally different or something related? And then I'm going to give you a hint. At some point, it's going to change one more time. And I want you to listen for when it changes that third time. Is it related to anything? Is it totally different? And let's see if we can get a sense of what the sections are. Now, in music theory, we would call this the A section, the very beginning. So this original melody, da 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 dun, da 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 dun. If we hear it again, we're going to call that the A section again. If we hear something totally different, we're going to call that the B section. So let's listen and let's see what you can hear to notice if there's different sections in this piece. So this is our A section. Is this familiar? Does this sound the same or does this sound totally different? How about this? So hopefully you were able to recognize some of the sections in this piece. So we start out with the A section, dun, da, 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 dun, and we do that a couple of times and nothing really changes, right? We hear that 2 times. But then here in measure 17, all of a sudden the left hand goes staccato, the left hand pattern changes, and we have a different melody. Bum, 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 dun, 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 dun. That's different. It's totally different. So we would call that the B section. And then we return here in measure 25. Da, 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 da,
So that's the A section again. So listening for form is very, very, very helpful because you start to get a sense of where are the different sections in the piece. And before I've even touched the keys, I now have a good sense of how I'm going to break up my practice and where I can practice different sections on different days and split things up in a way that makes sense. The third thing that you can listen for is patterns. And this could be rhythmic patterns, this could be melodic patterns, this could be sections that repeat, like what we were just doing, or this could be chord patterns or like the harmonic structure of the piece, depending on your music theory knowledge. So while you are listening, I'm gonna actually start to notate on this piece, and you might have already noticed some of these patterns, but let's see, let's do a rhythmic pattern. And I'm actually gonna skip us ahead to the B section so that we can hear a rhythmic pattern. Okay, so starting at measure 17. Okay, so you might have noticed as we're listening to the B section that we have this left-hand pattern starting in measure 17, this left-hand pattern that's staccato and it's for the whole measure, right? And we have that in measure 17 in the left hand, measure 18, measure 19, measure 20. So that is what we would call a rhythmic pattern. And just by listening and looking at the score, I can notice that pattern and my fingers aren't even touching the keys. Another thing that I notice when I'm listening to this piece is we have these repeated 16th notes, like up here in measure 6, right? Where we have the 8th note and then 2 16th notes right at the beginning of measure 6. We have that there. We also have it again in measure 14. We also have it again in measure 22. So that's a good example of a rhythmic pattern that we can notice just by listening and watching the score. The fourth way that you can listen to learn faster, memorize faster, and play with more musicality is to listen and sing along with the melody. And this might sound terrifying, especially if you don't consider yourself a singer, but anybody can do this. Lock yourself in a room where no one else is and turn on the recording and follow along and sing the melody. Doing so is going to really help you connect your aural memory with your visual memory of what you're seeing on the page. And if you go into practicing your piece already having a good sense of what the melody is, you are going to be light years ahead versus if you just sit down and start practicing the piece of music. Now you've already heard me sing in this video and I'm not even a singer, but just for the sake of helping you feel less embarrassed, let's do it together. I want you to actually follow along and sing with me. And I promise you nothing bad is going to happen. The world is not going to end. You will survive. Let's just sing these first 8 measures and see if we can follow along with this phrase as we watch the score and as we listen. Ooh, see, and I was wrong in the rhythm. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so doing this, you're going to learn a lot, and it doesn't matter if you're on the right pitches. The point here is that you're making the connection between the notes that you see on the page, your ear, what you're hearing, and what your voice is producing. But you'll notice that just like what I did, you're gonna make mistakes, and that's also going to help you get clearer on everything in the music before you start to practice it. The fifth way to listen, and this is one of the best ones, is to listen for tempo. This is the actual speed that performers are playing the piece at. And this one is tricky because oftentimes we hear a recording and we sit down to practice and we think, oh my gosh, it's supposed to go faster. It's supposed to go faster. It's supposed to go faster. And so you work so hard to get it fast, right? And to get the piece to go fast. But this is really the wrong approach. And on the confidence roadmap, which if you have it, you know, tempo is actually one of the later milestones because fast tempo will always be the byproduct of accurate practice. And so when you listen for tempo, what you're going to do is you're going to listen to 3 separate recordings and you're going to listen for the tempo. How fast are they actually playing? And I like to pull out a metronome and actually get a BPM marking for every single recording here. And I'm not going to do this on the video just because I don't want it to take too long, but when you do this, you will be surprised because what you'll notice is there's a huge range of tempo for whatever piece it is that you're working on. Some performers will be playing it on the slower side, some performers will be playing it on the faster side, but there's going to be at least like 20 BPMs of variation in the tempos that you hear. And this is very helpful in driving home that point that tempo is an artistic choice. It's a range, it's an interpretation. It's never one set number. And even if your piece has one set number, like it says this is supposed to be Allegro BPM 120, you still have an artistic choice to make. You should always be playing at the tempo where you can play things beautifully and musically. So listening to 3 different performers with 3 different tempos is going to help you really widen your perspective of the possibilities when it comes to tempo. All right, the 6th thing you can listen for is dynamics and articulations. And for this one, it's really helpful to listen to different recordings as well and to compare and to contrast, because similar to the point about tempo, you're going to hear a lot of different things. And let's take, for example, in this piece, Old French Song, I'm gonna go to the B section where we have those staccatos in the left hand. And I could listen to 3 different recordings and I might notice that some people really play the staccatos like bum, 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 very, very short. Some people might pedal through those staccatos, right? That's another performance practice with this piece. And some people might make those staccatos a little less staccato. Maybe they're still short and detached, but they're a little bit longer. Or if I look at the very first measure of this piece, it's supposed to be piano, right? But I might notice between the 3 different recordings that one person's piano is another person's mezzo piano, is another person's mezzo forte. And so these are the types of things that you'll start to notice, especially when you listen to several different recordings as you follow along in the score. And you can take notes and start to ask yourself, like, what do I like? How do I want to play it? You might find that with certain recordings, you want to copy what they're doing. And with certain recordings, you might really dislike the way that they're interpreting the piece. But every bit of information that you gather is helpful for how you will practice and how you will ultimately interpret and perform the piece. All right, the 7th thing you'll listen to is pedaling. And this is a really great one because it's very rare that you'll listen to a professional and have them follow every single pedal marking in the score to a T. And this is because there's a lot of variation when it comes to pedaling. Different editions of the same piece of music can have different pedaling suggestions by different editors. And that's true of the last point with dynamics and articulation as well. And so listening for pedaling, you're going to hear a huge amount of variation. Now with this one, a little pro tip is to find some recordings where you can actually see the performer's foot. So if it's a zoomed out performance, you can actually see when they're pedaling. And on YouTube, if you're listening on YouTube, you can actually go to the little gears icon, like the settings, and go to playback speed and slow down the recording so that you can really see when they're pedaling. And that's a little hack to make it a little bit easier if you can't always hear the difference in the pedaling. But just keep in mind with all of these points, the more you practice them, the easier it will get to hear. Because not only are you preparing to learn your current piece faster by doing this kind of work, every time you do this listening exercise where you listen to a piece you want to learn or a piece that you know with the score and while following along in the music, you're also strengthening your ear for any endeavor that you do in the future. So you're working on this piece, but also you're strengthening that skill of listening and hearing more detailed nuances. Okay, and the 8th way to listen so that you can memorize faster, learn faster, and play with way more musicality is to actually just follow along and listen for all of the different milestones in the confidence roadmap. If you already have it, pull it out and go through and just listen for milestone number 2, which is rhythm. Listen for milestone number 3, which is fingering, right? And follow along and hit every milestone while you're listening. If you don't have the roadmap, it is a very, very helpful tool because not only does it help you learn a piece from the ground up with confident musical expression because it breaks down exactly what order you need to go in to learn any piece, it's also helpful for exercises like this because you can go in order and just check off each milestone when you're listening. And you can also use it to troubleshoot pieces and to find the issues in your current pieces. So now, I want you to ask yourself, how familiar were you with Old French Song before you watched today's tutorial? Had you heard it? Had you never heard it? I bet either way, just from this short tutorial, you already have a much larger sense of what's going on in this piece, and you didn't even practice anything. Isn't that powerful? So let me know in the comments what you took away from this and which piece you're going to listen to next. And if you want to make this process even easier, you can grab the confidence roadmap. I'll link it in the description and I'll also link it on the end screen, where I'm also going to link another video where I actually show you how to make a listening chart. So when you're listening for things like tempo or pedaling, I show you like how to take notes on the page in a way that's really effective to keep track of all the different recordings that you're listening to. And if you ever hear someone say that listening to music isn't real practice, just send them this video. Happy practicing.